Story 1. Jealous sister begged for forgiveness after she paid my ex to crash my baby shower and claimed the baby was his. Now our parents don't want to see her anymore. Hi, so I, 28F, recently had a baby shower, and it didn't turn out the way that I had expected it to, which is why I'm here right now. So for context, I have an older sister, Rebecca, 32F, and she's kind of been the golden child all her life. She was kind of great at everything growing up, academically or even otherwise. She was that one kid who excelled in everything that she did, and everybody else got compared to her, including me. My parents always used her to set the standard for me, and it was a lot of pressure. I'm not going to lie because I don't think I was cut out for the same kind of things that she had already done. I was not bad when it came to academics, but I was not really good at certain subjects like science, and just because of that, my parents thought I was dumb or whatever. They never said it to me, but I could see that they were disappointed that I was not like my sister. Anyway, my sister went to medical school, and I decided to get a degree in business because that's what my eventual goal was, and I had absolutely no interest in doing whatever my sister did. Rebecca also had a pretty big head, and that's why we never really got along since the sibling gravity was too intense. She was very arrogant and egoistic, and I always felt like even if I was good at something, she would not be able to stand it. For instance, I was a great dancer, and I still am, but she didn't like that because that was one thing that she was not good at. Every time I achieved something, she would make a face and try to make the day all about herself, as well as if it was not enough that every other day was about her as well. Anyway, our parents tried to treat us equally and make it seem like it was all I knew deep down that they were more proud of my sister than me. We had a lot of problems growing up, but we sort of started being civil to each other once we moved out and after high school ended. We have mainly just tried to be cordial with each other. We meet during the holidays and stuff. I know that she still doesn't like me, and honestly, it's the same with me for her. But anyway, it doesn't matter to me that much anymore, but I guess it still matters to her a lot because she still can't stand not being the center of attention at every given moment. She is still an overachiever, but I guess the only thing that I have surpassed her in is when it comes to relationships. Honestly, I didn't even think it was something that we were competing in interpersonal relationships, well, quite personal. I don't think that is something that I consider an achievement. I guess she's not cool with the fact that I am married and on the way to having my first child, even though I'm younger than her. My husband, Rick, 30M, and I have been together for almost 3 years now. We got married 1 year ago, and just 2 or 3 months after our wedding, we got to know that we were pregnant. We were thrilled naturally and announced it just a few weeks after that. My parents were very happy for me, and I honestly have a good relationship with them now. We had spoken about certain things after I had graduated from college, and I had let them know that my childhood had not been a particularly easy one, no matter how hard they tried to cover it up. They had always used my sister as an example to set the standard for me, and it had put me under an immense amount of pressure, which I communicated with them after I had graduated from college, and they actually apologized to me. They said that they were sorry for treating me that way, and that they hadn't even realized that they were making unfair comparisons. They told me that they loved both of us equally and promised me that they would try to make it up to me and be better parents. I did not know what to think about it back then after we had that conversation, but they have genuinely tried to be there for me after that, and ever since then we have had a good relationship. So I don't have any bad blood in everything that happened in my childhood. I've put it in the past. They even tried to patch things up between Rebecca and me, but Rebecca made it very clear that she was not interested in having a good relationship with me, so I told them to give up on that because we were too old anyway. And honestly, Rebecca was not the kind of person that I wanted to be friends with. She always has been too full of herself, and even now, she is quite arrogant, and the only thing that she likes talking about is herself and her own achievements. I'm really glad that she's doing well in life, but I don't want to constantly hear about it because it's just exhausting after one point, especially when I know for a fact that I can be happy for her achievements in spite of our equation. But she can never be happy for me, and she has proven it. She had a selfie face at my engagement, the same kind of behavior at my wedding. She was not happy for me when I announced my pregnancy, and at my baby shower, she crossed every single line possible and tried to sabotage it in such a way that I don't think anybody in their right mind would be able to forgive her. And she's lucky that I did not press charges against her and my ex, which is who she had brought along as an uninvited and unwanted +1 to the baby shower. So certain things about my ex, Kurt, he and I do not get along in the slightest. I hate him, and I don't think I will ever forgive him in my entire life because he was the most toxic and abusive person that I have ever had the misfortune of knowing. And everybody in my family knows about that, how terrible our relationship was and how much I had to struggle to get out of that phase of my life. He and I got together in my first year of college, and we continued to have an on and off relationship for the next 4 years. I had to end it eventually because I found out that he had been cheating on me, but he was not ready to let me go, so he kept trying to talk to me. He even started talking to me at one point and only stopped when I told him that I would report him to the cops if he didn't. He kept talking crap about me to all my friends, even though he insisted that he still loved me and wanted me back. Even while we were dating, we kept breaking up because of his behavior. He was always a little suspicious of me, and every time that he would see me talking to somebody else or going out to places without him, he would accuse me of cheating or not being as invested in the relationship as he was. But then I was very, very easy to manipulate back then because I was desperate to be loved, and when he apologized to me, he would make sure that he laid it on extra thick so I would buy it. So when things were good, he always made sure that things were so great that I would never be able to forget about it, and he would bring that up whenever we fought. However, things were bad. Well, they were so bad that I would end up crying for days, and I think I was pretty depressed for those 4 years of my life. My self-esteem and self-worth were absolutely shadowed, and I felt like I would never be able to move on from this because I just kept going back to him again and again. People in my family knew about this because I had introduced him to them after 1 year of dating, but then we kept breaking up and stuff, and I had confided in my parents about this. I had even told a few of my cousins who happened to be close to me, my other relatives. I'm not sure if they knew about it in detail, but they had a clue, including Rebecca. However, I'm sure about one thing, even if they did not know how toxic our relationship was and how abusive he was to me, everybody knew that our breakup had been terrible, and in spite of that, Rebecca went out of her way to bring him to the party. I'm just lucky that I had known about it right from the beginning because a couple of weeks ago when I had been telling my parents that I was planning to host a baby shower, I started hearing from a couple of my friends that my sister had been asking around about my ex. She had been stupid enough to ask my close friends about what Kurt had been up to, and she tried to pass it off like it was just out of curiosity, but I knew that something was off. So just to be on the safe side, I decided not to invite her when it was time to send out the invitations and even spoke to my husband and my parents about it, and I explained the situation to them. My parents were not entirely happy with this decision, but they respected it. However, she was still able to find out when I was having my baby shower and where I was having it, probably speaking to some other relatives who had been invited since I hadn't exactly briefed people not to talk to her about this, and that was my mistake. Anyway, on the day of my baby shower a couple of days ago, everything was going smoothly, but then about an hour after the event had started, Kurt showed up at my house. I was shocked to see him, and since this was an event that I was having at my house, there was no security, so he just walked up to the door, and nobody really thought twice before opening it, even though we do have an intercom. The thing about him had just slipped my mind, and I just opened the door, and he walked in with a bunch of papers, and he handed them over to Rick as soon as he had walked in. I was so confused. I literally froze because I hadn't seen him ever since we had broken up, and I did not know how to react. In the meantime, as soon as he had handed those papers over to Rick, he was also trying to recover from the shock of all of this happening, and Kurt just announced that he had been having an affair with me for the past 6 months, and he was kind of short that the baby was his because the date of conception matched with all the dates that we had been getting together. So now he was here to demand his right as a father, and when the baby was born, if the paternity test proved that the baby was his, he would be getting partial custody as well. He accused me of avoiding him for the past couple of weeks and not having an answer for him, even though he had said that he wanted to be a part of the baby's life. And then he told me that he did not want to do things this way, but I was the one who had forced his hand apparently. Then he walked out of our house, leaving us all in shock because obviously none of the things that he had accused me of were true in the slightest. After that, it was completely chaotic because I had a breakdown because I was afraid of what people might say after that, even though I knew that it was not the truth. Rick knew, and so did my parents. Luckily, nobody believed a word of anything that had been said, and even the papers, which were just printouts of alleged conversations that we had had, which were all fake that Kurt had left with Rick, were all kept aside, and everybody came to my side to comfort me because I was crying so hard. I don't really remember much of what happened after that, only that I was crying a lot, and I couldn't even speak to anybody, so I had to go to my room to calm down, and I ended up crying myself to sleep because when I woke up, it was almost midnight, and everybody had left already. Rick was the one who filled me in on what had happened after I went to my room and told me that the guests had had their meals already since it was lunchtime, and nobody really stayed for long and just kind of left after that whole fiasco. I was very embarrassed, and the first thing that I did after hearing what had happened to Rick was to write a text to apologize to everyone for what had happened. And then I thought about confronting the person that I had a clue was responsible for all of this. I knew that Rebecca might have had something to do with this, but then it occurred to me that if I asked her straight up if she had a hand in any of this, she would obviously decline it and then blow it out of proportion and make it seem like I had something against her. So I decided to play it smart, and after a conversation with Rick, the two of us decided that we were going to speak to Kurt directly and try to get to the bottom of what was going on because we were sure that somebody must have put him up to this. I knew that Kurt had been in love with me and whatever, but for the past couple of years after I had made it very clear on social media that I was serious about Rick, he had stopped trying to talk to me and had not even been speaking to my friends about me like he would in the past. After so many years of being completely MIA, it was very unnatural for him to resurface and then show up with all these lies in order to ruin my reputation and my relationship with my husband. Somebody had to be involved, and I was pretty sure that it was Rebecca, but because I could not get it out of her, I decided to talk to him instead. I unblocked him everywhere and tried my luck, not knowing what to expect. I'm just thankful that he was still a sucker, and as soon as I texted him online, he replied to it. I did not say much. I had just asked him why he would do such a thing, and I told him that I had always loved him in the past, but I would never have expected him to try to do something like this and pull off a stunt which would ruin my reputation, especially when I was pregnant. I told him that I had always had a soft spot for him, and I never would have done this to him if I were in his place. I knew that speaking to him this way would make him feel bad about what he did because I knew how he was, and just as I had suspected, he replied to me instantly and told me that he was really sorry about what he had done. He hadn't been thinking, and whatever Rebecca had asked him to. I pretended to be shocked and said that I did not believe him because I knew that my sister would never do something like this. So then he actually sent me proof of his conversations with Rebecca, and apparently, she had actually paid him a sum of money to pull off the stunt at my baby shower on purpose to ruin it. As soon as I had those screenshots, I blocked Kurt again, even though he had sent me a message saying that he had never meant to hurt me and that he was still in love with me. He was trying to tell me that he was just pissed off that I was married and having a baby with another man when he knew that I was meant to be with him, which is why he had even agreed to do what Rebecca had asked him to in the first place, but I did not care about any of that. I had the screenshots, and then I immediately sent them to my parents and told them what really happened. It was pretty late at night, but even then, as soon as my parents received those messages, they called me up. All of us were pretty shocked that she would actually go out of her way to pay somebody to do something so weird and shocking. But anyway, when my parents called me up, I told them that after this, I didn't think I could be on good terms with Rebecca anymore or even be civilized around her, and I made it very clear that now they could either pick her or me, and it was a choice that they absolutely had to make. They did not even need to think about it. They just told me that they would choose me in a heartbeat because of what Rebecca had done. It was completely unfair, and she needed to learn a lesson. I was satisfied with that answer, so we did not discuss it further, and obviously I had blocked her anyway, so I didn't need to worry about her. For a few days, everything was calm, but then this morning, she showed up at my door, and she was hysterical. I did not open the door to her because I knew she was going to create trouble for me, and I was home alone, so I just let her wail outside. She kept crying about the ultimatum that I had given my parents, and apparently, she had been trying to get in touch with them but had found herself blocked, so she had tried to contact them by showing up at their place. But they had refused to let her in and had said that they did not even want to see her face after what she had done. They told her all about the ultimatum that I had given my parents, and they had chosen me, so she knew about it. They had told her to go away, and instead of just going home, she had come straight to my place to beg me to fix this and was apologizing profusely. But I told her that this was not in my hands anymore, and she had dug her own grave, so now she had to lie in it. And then I told her to go away as well, but she just kept crying until I threatened to call the cops on her. However, a few hours have passed now, and I kind of feel bad about what happened. I don't know if it's the pregnancy hormones, but I just feel guilty about it. I feel bad for making my parents choose between my sister and me. Update 1. So thank you so much for all the supportive comments. I guess it was the hormones after all because it has been 2 days, and I really feel differently about the situation now. I guess I was just taking it all on myself because I was feeling very stressed out due to the way she was crying at my doorstep. I was not used to that, so I started feeling guilty just like any other human being would. Anyway, I've spoken to my parents, and they told me that she has not tried to get in touch with them so far after they had told her about the ultimatum and the choice that they had made. Once again, while we were talking, they apologized to me for everything that had happened in the past, and they said that it was their own fault that she was acting like this because the bar had been set too high, and she was not used to not being the center of attention all the time, which is why she was acting crazy. There was also the fact that she had been through a really bad breakup around the time that I announced my pregnancy, which I was not aware of. Her boyfriend of almost 2 years had dumped her because he wanted to work in another state and she wanted to try the long-distance thing, but her boyfriend had refused and broken up with her because it was too much work, so she was naturally devastated, and it explained a lot of things like why she was so bitter that I was doing so well in my life when it came to relationships. Honestly, like I had said in my original post, I had never competed in these things, career-wise and in academics maybe, but I just did not ever see the point of competing when it came to how well we were doing in our love lives because that would just be unhealthy and toxic, even more so than the competition that we already had going on between ourselves. Anyway, after getting to know all of this from my parents, I did have a bit of sympathy for her, but then I remember that she had literally paid my abusive ex-boyfriend to show up at my baby shower and accuse me of cheating on my husband with him. I mean, that was just straight up psychotic, and I'm sorry, but I don't think any breakup, no matter how bad it is, can excuse behavior like that. So I think it's perfectly fair for me to ask my parents not to speak to her again if they want to have contact with me. My parents also told me that even if I had not given them that ultimatum, they still would have stopped talking to her because the way she had been acting was just not acceptable. They told me that when she had shown up at their doorstep, and they had told her that they did not want to speak to her, she had not been crying as she had been with me when she visited me. She was devastated and was crying a lot, but before that with them, she had just been very angry and had been screaming at them at the top of her lungs. She had basically been accusing them of treating her like she was a loser just because she was not married and did not have a baby yet and constantly acting like they were disappointed in her. And she could see that, even though I don't think my parents were acting like that. They were still pretty proud of her because honestly, she was a doctor. It did not matter to them if she was married or not, and they were not so narrow-minded either. My parents were just proud of me for different things and it was completely fine, but she had just assumed that just because my parents were proud of me, she was no longer going to be in the limelight, and that's what had pissed her off so badly because she believed that just because they were treating me well, it meant that they no longer loved her and she was not the golden child anymore. That was kind of my parents' fault because they had treated her differently in my childhood, so it had an unrealistic expectation from everybody. Anyway, she had actually acknowledged and admitted to these things that she believed that my being treated well was a sign that they were less proud of her now, just because I got knocked up, those exact words that she had used, and that was the limit for my parents, after which they had told her to go away, and then she had come to me. Once my parents had discussed all of this with me, we came to the realization that all of us had done the right thing, and now I really don't feel guilty anymore because obviously paying my ex-boyfriend to pull off a stunt like that at my baby shower just to harass me while I was pregnant because she was jealous of me was not acceptable in the slightest, and then she was not even sorry about it until she realized that her parents were not going to speak to her. And if it took her that much to feel sorry about her actions, I don't really think she was genuinely sorry anyway. So the bottom line is that she has been cut off from the family, and we are even going to tell them that if they speak to her, they better not speak to me because I just don't want any drama anymore. Update 2. Hey, so last week, Rebecca had shown up at my door and was trying to apologize to me, and that's when I made that post. After that, she did not really talk to us because we had made it very clear to her that we did not want anything to do with her. We had even spoken to a bunch of our relatives and had said that she was not going to be invited to any of our events, and we would prefer that she not be invited to any other family events in the future either, at least until I was fine with whatever had happened, and I had even explained my reasons and told everyone the truth about what she had done and why my ex-boyfriend had shown up at my baby shower that day. Everyone was pretty scandalized and agreed to not keep in touch with her, and that was that. So since then, nobody had heard from her, but today my husband called me up while he was at work, and that's pretty unusual since Rick is very devoted to his work, and he's quite a busy man, so he doesn't really call when he's at work, and I know that he's usually caught up, and so I don't call either. But today, he called me in the middle of the day, and I was pretty concerned. So when I answered, I knew that something had happened. He told me that Rebecca had apparently shown up at his workplace to speak to him, and was refusing to leave even though he had told the receptionist that he did not want to see her right now. However, she was just sitting in the lobby and refusing to go away, so now it was becoming very embarrassing for him. He told me to do something because he had an important meeting with a client coming up, and so I decided to unblock her and speak to her just to get her out of there. I also happen to know the receptionist at his office, and I texted her saying that if she doesn't leave after the phone call with me, they should just call security and have her escorted out. She does not deserve special treatment just because she is related to me, and she should be treated just the same as anybody else in her position would have been. So I tried to speak to her on the phone and explain to her that what she was doing was very embarrassing for all of us as a family, and it reflected poorly on her as well, so she needed to get out of there because she was not entitled to disturb my husband at his workplace since he was not even involved in any of this. This was between me and her and the rest of our family, and he had nothing to do with any of that, but she refused, saying that she believed that my husband would be able to make me see sense. And then we had a bit of an argument, after which I realized that it was pointless to try and speak to her. She was just too stubborn, so I told the receptionist at my husband's office to have her escorted out, and eventually that's what had to be done because she was just refusing to get out and was throwing a tantrum in the lobby and demanding to see him, even when she had been told that he was in a meeting several times. She's just lucky that she did not get arrested because of us. We might hate her, but we don't want her to get arrested, but that would fix her, I think. Anyway, that's what happened today, and I'm honestly so sick of this. Update 3. A lot of people in the comments section suggested that we get a restraining order against her, and I really think that's good advice. So Rick and I have spoken to a lawyer, and in a couple of days we are going to file for a protective order against Rebecca, and hopefully it is going to come through. I have also spoken to my parents about it, and they think that it's the right move, especially after what happened with Rick at his workplace. If she's willing to go to such levels, there's no telling what she might do next, and with a restraining order, we might not be able to guarantee that she will never show up around us or try to endanger us again, but at least we will have the safety of knowing that if she tries to do anything, we can just have her arrested, and that might scare her off. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. A crazy lady accuses me of kidnapping my stepson and then tries to kidnap him from me. So the backstory is, I'm a mixed ethnicity individual. I've been confused for many races over my 29 years on this earth, but I'm literally Caucasian and African American. Usually it can be figured out, but the difference with me is that my father is Caucasian, therefore my hair is straight. I'm originally from Texas and I'm usually confused for being Mexican, but now I live in Massachusetts and I've never had to deal with anyone concerning my race until this day. Also, I'm married to a Caucasian woman who had a child before we married. His father is not in his life as much, and I took the responsibility because I love this woman and I love this little boy as if he were my own. He's 4 years old now and I've been in his life since he was 1 year old. Anyways, on to the story. My wife needed a few things from the grocery store and she needed to run a few more errands. Usually, she just goes and knocks things out herself because I'm asleep. I work nights, but this particular day I happened to be awake and I offered to go for her. She works hard and does a lot, so I definitely felt it was necessary to do something for her so she could just relax for the day. I took my son with me so she could rest up and just take it easy and give me some time to spend with my son for some bonding. We completed all the errands, which went smoothly, and then headed to the grocery store to finish up our day. My son, being a typical 4-year-old, was full of energy, running ahead of me, laughing and speaking to everyone he comes across, which I generally don't mind as long as he doesn't hit anyone and stays within eye view. As I'm making my way down an aisle looking for canned corn, my son jogs to the end of it when an older lady is entering at the other end. My son, being the sweet social butterfly he is, approaches and exclaims an excited, "Hi! Me 4 and me Ryan blesses little hearts." The lady looked down and says, "Hello there. You shouldn't be running around unattended. Let's go find your parents." I didn't think anything of her statement because I assumed she just hadn't seen me. "Ryan, come back here, bud, please." He excitedly runs back toward me and starts turning in circles because, he's 4. I'm still searching the shelves as a lady walks past me and stops behind me. Again, I think nothing of it because it's a grocery store and you have to share the aisles. I turn my basket around and start to walk toward the front cash registers when this lady literally blocks my path. I say, "Excuse me," and try to walk around her, and she moves her cart in front of me again. I honestly thought she was just getting confused and said, "Excuse me." once again and tried one more time to go around. She just blocks my path. The following conversation ensues. Me, sorry about that. We'll get out of your way. The lady, oh, I don't think so. You're not going anywhere with that child. Me, you mean my son? The lady, that's not your child. He's white and you're a Mexican. You probably didn't even know his name until he said it to me. Me, sure, whatever, lady. Can you just move? My wife is at home, which is anxiously waiting for us. The lady, stop your lies. You're not taking him anywhere. You pervert. This whole time, my son is standing close to me, holding my leg because he was honestly getting scared. I was getting angry because I didn't have much sleep and I have a short fuse anyway. Me, as you can see, he's standing close to me because he trusts me, and you're scaring him. So how about you buzz off? The lady, no, he's scared because of you. He doesn't know how to express it yet. She looks at my son. Come on now, sweetie. I'm here to rescue you. Come with me. Thankfully, my son was able to communicate to her that he wasn't going anywhere with her, but she was having none of it. She literally grabbed my son and began to run. Caught me off guard because I honestly could not fathom what was actually happening. My son just starts screaming loudly because he was so scared, and this lady is just like, don't worry, sweetie. He won't hurt you. I promise. Suddenly, I snap back into reality and I begin to chase after this crazy, which while running through the store. I yell for people to stop her and that she's kidnapping my son, and thankfully a worker stops her before she makes the exit. Lady, why are you stopping me? This Mexican here is trying to kidnap my grandson. My son is literally bawling his eyes out, extending his arms out, calling for me. This lady was relentless and will not let go until my son, even after he slapped her face multiple times. I laughed a little, not gonna lie, at this point. A manager shows up and asked what's going on. The lady spoke before me. Lady, this, pointing at me, pervert is trying to kidnap my grandson, and I was just trying to escape. Me, that's my son, you psycho. Now let him go. The manager didn't know what to believe. I don't blame him. He was caught in a weird situation. So I pulled on my phone and showed him pictures of me and my son that dated back a year ago as proof. This lady still would not give up and accused me of faking the photos. Like, how would you do that exactly? I'll never know, but whatever. Sadly, there were only two other ladies there taking the psycho side and saying that I was attempting to kidnap my own son because there was no way we were a family because of our different skin tones. One even called the police, which I was actually happy about because I knew they'd be able to review the security cameras. Even still, I called my wife to see if she would come to the store to get the situation cleared up quicker. As I told her what was going on, she zoomed to the store. She got there about the same time as the police. The crazy ladies were giving their statements to the cops. My wife walked up as soon as you walked in. My son goes, "Mama, help." My wife is a true mama bear, and she immediately flew into a rage when she saw this lady holding my son. Wife, let him go now. Lady, sorry, sweetie. I was just trying to protect him from this pervert over here. Lady number 2. Yeah, we saw him trying to kidnap him, but this lady saved him. The cop looks at the lady and is confused. Officer, I thought this was your grandson? Wife, I have no idea who that lady is. She takes out her phone and shows the officer a picture of my mother-in-law. Lady, okay, I'm sorry. He's not my grandson, but I was only trying to protect him from this dirty pervert over here. Lady number 2. Yeah, I witnessed the whole thing. He snatched that child and tried to run away with him, but this lady stopped him. Lady number 3. Yes, I saw it too. He needs to be arrested, and you, pointing at my wife, should be thankful that this lady was here to save your son because you obviously just let him loose wherever. Wife, who are you talking about again? All 3 crazy ladies pointed at me. Wife, oh, you mean my husband? Lady 1, husband. Wife, yeah. Who do you think called me and got me here so fast? I presented my ID to the officer and the manager, and my wife did the same. We also each showed pictures of us on our phones to prove that we really are a family. The cop nodded in approval and handed us our phones back and jotted down a few notes. The three ladies, for some reason, still kept trying to say that this was all fake and my wife was in on the kidnapping, and then we needed to be arrested. My wife lost it at this point and let off some colorful words. I won't repeat them here, but she definitely got her point across. The nail in the coffin came from the psycho trio. The officer turned to the manager and asked, "Sir, do the cameras working here?" Manager: "Yes, we have them inside and out." Officer: "Okay, let's go review." The three ladies' faces went pale, like ghostly pale. The officer reviewed the outside camera as I pulled into the parking lot and saw me take my son out of my car, and then as I went up and down the aisles and, most importantly, the instance the woman snatched my son and began to run. Upon his return, he asks, "Would you like to press charges?" Lady 1: "Yes, I would." The officer says, "Why would I be asking you that question? Shut your mouth and sit down." He turns to me and repeats the question, and I say, "Absolutely." Lady 1 was charged with attempted kidnapping, false imprisonment, providing a false police report, and child endangerment. The other two ladies were also charged with providing a false police report as well. To make matters worse for Lady 1, my son bruises easily and she left some terrible spots on him from where she was grasping him, but he's fine. This added a charge of child abuse to her rap sheet. I have court later this year, but I'm not sure when because of the pandemic. The officer will be following up with me in a few weeks. So, who here is the biggest jerk? First off, how does lady number 1 not realize that that kid was with his dad and was trying to get back to his dad when she was taking him away, and he was hitting her in the face telling her that he wanted to go to his dad? That alone should have made it obvious. But before that even happened at all, what should have happened if she was really that concerned for some reason, which I don't really know why she would be because the kid wasn't in distress or anything weird. She'd just go up to the kid and ask him, "Is that your dad?" But it seems like because you thought the dad was Mexican looking, that it was so far out of the question, so far out of the reality to be a possibility that you didn't even consider that at all. And her other two friends, Lady 2 and 3, are just her little cheerleaders in the background trying to support whatever she's doing without really even knowing what's going on either. And the fact that he's pressing charges, these sound like very serious charges to press on someone. Attempted kidnapping, false imprisonment, providing a false police report, and child endangerment among the other ones that you got later on. That's pretty heavy. So let me know what you would do if you were in this situation. And who do you think is the jerk? My mom asked an entitled mother to let go of my hair. She refused and got her life ruined. When I was a kid, I never cut my hair no matter what, so I had very long, pretty, dirty blonde hair. And as a kid, a lot of people would ask to touch it, and I was fine with it as long as they had my permission. So when I was 6 years old, my mom took me to a grocery store to buy some things for dinner that night. We got to the store. My mom got the stuff she needed, but was missing the bread from the other side of the store. She sent me to go get it since I was small and fast. When I got to the bread, I picked out the brand we would usually buy, and at that time I really liked baguettes and other types of breads. So when I saw the baguettes, I totally forgot that my mom was waiting for me and I grabbed a loaf. Then I headed back to my mom. So when I was heading back to my mom from the bread aisle, I felt someone pulling my hair, and not gently, no, they yanked it. They pulled so hard I thought my hair was going to come out, and I cried so hard my mom heard me across the store. Turns out it was a kid about my age who wanted to touch my hair, so his mom, and I say his 40-year-old mother, pulled my hair so her kid could touch it. My mom rushed over and told the lady to let go of me. This is how the conversation went. My mom: "Let my daughter go." The entitled mom: "My child just wanted to touch her hair. She has very pretty hair." Me: "She pulled on my hair. It hurts." Mom: "You could have just asked. You can't just pull kids' hair. I can call the police for assault." Entitled mom: "You are harassing me. All I did was let my son touch her hair. I can call the police on you for harassing me and my child." My mom: "Firstly, I am not harassing you. You assaulted my child. And secondly, you can call the police. You will only be making things worse for yourself." As it turns out, the entitled mom did call the police, and they both took our statements. The entitled mother had given in an over-exaggerated and dramatic report, telling the police, as we would find out later, that I had given consent for her kid to touch my hair, and my mom had come out of nowhere and started harassing the entitled mother. My mother had given the police the actual report from her side. I had been asked to give a report, but I was too scared and tired from the experience to say much. They checked the security footage and saw what actually happened. I don't remember the next part, so bear with me here. My mom decided to press charges and sue the entitled mom for assault, and then she was sent to jail for 6 months and fined for providing a false police report. As a cherry on top, if she's in a store and she's gonna lie about what happened to the police, they're obviously gonna check the security camera footage. Why would you not think that that was the out that was inevitably going to happen? That doesn't make sense. And regardless of how cool you think someone's hair is, why would you pull on it to the point where the girl was about to cry? I mean, you shouldn't touch it in the first place, but she didn't just touch it. She yanked it so hard that the little girl thought she was going to cry. The op here, so if you're in the situation, let me know what you would do, and who was the biggest jerk here. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Golden child brother framed me for stealing family biz money. Parents kicked me out. Years later, he's arrested for something illegal and they come crawling back for help. This is about my brother, who is 7 years elder to me. He has always been a golden child, the dream child of every parent. Mind you, he was not as perfect as he portrayed. He was an imposter and manipulator who knew the tricks to get away with what he wanted. And my parents were so blinded by his mannerisms and charisma that they never even tried to question any of his actions. I'm 36M, working as an office executive in a legal firm. It is not a very high-paying job, but a decent one. But I have immense gratitude for my work and the life I was able to build for myself. If you know my history, it would be hard to believe that I would ever overcome my miserable life and make a living. You see, I come from a renowned family. My great-grandfather was one of the first few drug manufacturers in the city. He had many children and grandchildren, which led to us having a huge family. And now that manufacturing business has been divided into several subunits, which are taken care of by my father, my uncles, and several other second and third cousins of the family. My father inherited a medical warehouse from where the medicines are supplied to retail chains and individual drugstores. Coming to my generation, we are 2 brothers. My elder brother, who would be the subject and the subsequent part of my story, is a doctor, and I, the younger one, am no one. Yeah, I hold no family portfolio, nor do I have any medical degree, which my family wanted me to have. In fact, I hold no reputational degree that is suitable for my family's legacy. I'm just a graduate who somehow crawled to the college finish line. Not very proud to say this, but I completed my 3-year college program in 5 years. Was I dumb? Perhaps. I was a loser with zero self-esteem. While I'm not trying to whitewash myself, it's true that my parents had a lot to contribute towards my almost failing life. As I said, my elder brother has been a golden child ever since he was a kid. He was a school topper, won medals and trophies for academics and sports, and helped Dad at the warehouse while still in school. He was, the epitome of intelligence and goodness. He's 7 years elder to me, so by the time I even understood what competition was, he had set the bar so high that I never aimed to match it. I had given up even before trying. I knew I could never be as good as him, so I never even tried in that way. I was never jealous of him or had any bad feelings for him, as far as I remember. We shared a pretty normal and healthy bond as brothers growing up. I mostly found him to be busy with his own stuff. Studies, work, and friends. You can well imagine, growing up with a golden child like my brother, I was subjected to constant comparison and mockery by my family and relatives, and even the teachers in the school. That's what happens when you go to the same school as your topper brother. I was an average student, unlike my brother who was a topper. I wasn't good at sports either. I wasn't overweight but not that fit to be picked up by the school team. I was mocked and ridiculed for being good at nothing. In that situation, I needed a coping mechanism which I found in the company of bad boys. I got involved in every sort of mischievous activity in high school. Since I had access to prescription-free drugs, I got popular in the bad boys group. I used to supply stuff from my father's warehouse and was even caught twice. I was severely punished and grounded by my parents. Stealing added another feather to my cap. I was officially declared the black sheep of the family. Instead of grounding me, if they paid attention to my psychology, my life would have been different today. After high school, I was forced by my parents to take a course in medicine, but I refused. I knew that I suck at studying. I took up an accounting degree, which annoyed my parents. They despised me for choosing a substandard career. There are a total of 11 doctors in my extended family and relatives, followed by several nurses and other healthcare professionals. Anything below a nursing degree is considered menial here. Dad refused to fund my education, and I had to opt for an education loan. When I was leaving home for college, Dad said that he would be providing me with pocket money only until college. After that, I'll be on my own to pay off my college debt. I said, cool. I wasn't that diligent either to be able to take my insult as a motivation to work hard and prove myself. Instead, I hit rock bottom in my college. I knew I was not going to get anything from my parents further. If there be any miracle, they might give some peanuts money from their inheritance, but pretty sure that the meaty balls would go to my golden brother. So, I decided to live my life to the full in college. Got into even worse company of dudes, got into substance, and took 5 years to complete a 3-year college program. Didn't undertake any part-time job to fund my education. Just wasted myself in all sorts of illicit activities. After college, I had no plans what to do in life. I remained in my delusional world for another 6 months until I was kicked out of the college dorm. I tried finding an office job, but was never able to crack any interviews because of my poor skills and casual attitude. I lived in a shanty-dingy apartment with one of my friends until he asked me to move out. Hopped on to another friend's couch for a few more months. It got worse when the bank started chasing me to repay the education loan. I didn't have money for a hamburger. How was I supposed to pay off my debt? Dad had stopped sending me money long back. I was on my own. I took some odd jobs, but the money was so low that it could barely keep my body and soul intact. I begged and borrowed time from bank officials until they sent 2 heavily built collectors at my door, who pulled me by my collar and gave me a 15 to 15-day ultimatum to pay the mortgage. I was scared. I couldn't run anywhere. I had nowhere to run. I called up my mom and begged her to help me out, but she hung up on me saying I deserve this. Then I called up my only hope in that situation, my brother. He was a successful doctor by then and had his own clinic. He said he needs time to think about it. I told him about my urgency and promised to return the money as soon as possible. I know I was a wasted guy who couldn't be trusted with money, so if he had refused to help me in that situation, it would still have been better. But what he did was far from my imagination. A week later, he called me. He said he was able to arrange the money, asked me for my account details. Without thinking twice, I gave him my bank details with PIN and password. Yeah, naive me or maybe vulnerable me. The next day, I received a text message that my account had been credited with money, which was like 4x of my entire education loan. I was surprised. I called him up to ask why he would send so much more money than I needed. He said he liquidated his asset and the entire amount came to my bank account. He said he would leave the money I needed and transfer the remaining to his account. For that, he needed full access to my account. I readily agreed and gave him all the data he needed. Like he said, he withdrew all the money, leaving the amount I would need to pay off my debt. I paid the debt and felt like a mountain being lifted off my shoulder. My happiness was short-lived because within an hour, I got a call from my dad yelling and abusing me like a maniac and asking me to take the first bus home. He was accusing me of stealing the money from the family's business account. I had no clue what he was talking about. It didn't even hit me that my brother would have been involved in this theft, and I was just being a scapegoat, until I reached home and witnessed the chaos myself. I was welcomed by a harsh slap by my father, followed by something I could only describe as mental abuse. They accused me of siphoning off the business fund and using it to pay off my debt. I was astonished. They knew I was struggling to pay off the debt. Dad noticed suspicious activities in his business account, and when he reported to the bank, he got the information that the money was transferred to my account. Dad told my brother about it, and he made up the story that I had stolen that money. He also pulled up my bank statement to frame me as a thief. I was lost for words when he meticulously described the details. My entire extended family was present, and I could see disgust in their eyes. I fumbled and whispered, "Bro, It was you who transferred the money to my account. He acted as if I mentioned some ghost. He denied having any involvement in this. I called up the bank asking for the information in whose account the money was transferred from my account. The official said it was some untraceable private account and had no details, whereas the business account of my father clearly showed that the money was transferred to my account. So, my brother used my details to transfer the money from my father's business account to mine, and then later transfer the money to his private account without leaving any footprints. Wow. I couldn't believe that he would stoop so low to fulfill his selfish motives. I pulled him at the corner and asked him to come clean, but he was an imposter. He denied everything. My parents came to his rescue. He was their golden child. Some of the family members believed that I couldn't steal money, but they had no reason to support me. They asked me to get the money back, but I had no means to trace it. Dad was calling up the cops to sue me, but brother stopped him saying it would ruin the family's reputation. How smart of him, I thought. It was his guilt, but no, he was just being smart. If cops and the judiciary got involved, they might have dug the truth that my brother was behind all this. He posed this as a favor to me for saving him from cops and asked me to disappear from their lives despite being innocent. I felt like a criminal in everyone's eyes. I couldn't face anyone present there and ran away. I was literally running on the streets, bawling. I still remember that evening when I was aimlessly running with my eyes and face covered with tears that I could barely see anything. I ultimately slumped on the sidewalk and cried like a baby. I walked for almost an hour before taking a bus to my condo. That day, I pledged to never return to my family again and take charge of my life. It took me 8 years to build a decent life for myself. It wasn't easy, but the fire and anger kept me going. I wanted to avenge my humiliation, expose my brother, and rip my family apart. But I also knew I was powerless in front of them. My brother and my family had everything at their disposal to destroy me, and I had nothing. I didn't even have the money to afford therapy. I had almost forgotten most of this history, but something happened a few days back which brought back all the harrowing memories of the past. My sister-in-law visited me. Yes, my brother's wife. She showed up unexpectedly at my workplace. I couldn't recognize her. I had blocked all my family and relatives on social media. She somehow scavenged my coordinates and found me. She was here to seek help. She wanted my help to rescue my brother from prison time. He was being investigated on the charges of selling prohibited drugs. I asked her if she knew about our history. She nodded yes. She, in fact, confessed that brother had used that money to set up a side business of manufacturing and selling prohibited and illicit drugs. It got reported by someone. Brother got the hint from his accomplice and shut down the business a few months ago, but cops are investigating it, and it is just a matter of time before he is arrested. I asked her why she had to run to me when there was an army of people in our family who could help her. She said that cops had shut down all the warehouses of my father, and they are also being investigated. Cops suspect that dad is also hands and gloves with brother in this business. Their bank account has also been frozen. Extended family and relatives have curled up their sleeves to safeguard themselves. Of course, they don't want to be involved in this mess and suffer. But why me? Because I work for a legal firm, and I can request an attorney to fight for my brother. Really? They think so? I'll help them out when he falsely framed me, humiliated me, and got me kicked out? She begged for my help for the sake of her children. I asserted that my family is dead to me and politely asked her to leave. My mind was worked up after she left. The next day, my mom called me. She pleaded with me to help them out because as a family, we should have each other's back. I burst out laughing on hearing her preachings. I asked her where was her family bonding shits for all these years when they treated me unwanted for all my life. She said, "Forget about the past. It's time to be together as a family." Such a hypocrite. I hung up on her and asked her not to call me again. But she dialed me again after an hour. She also left a voice note. "Don't be a baby and act like an adult for once." Yeah, that's right. I'm a baby. I don't intend to help them at all, but I don't feel good about their misery either. I had spent many months planning to avenge my humiliation, and now when karma is biting them, I don't feel happy about it. Update 1. The outreach and response to my post blew my mind. Thanks for all the empathy. means a lot. You guys were right in saying that he deserved everything he got, and my parents also deserved to taste the bitterness they had been harnessing. Call me devil, but I decided to use this as an opportunity to avenge my humiliation. So, when my mom called me next for help, I said I would come home and discuss this. I went home, and they were all so loving and caring for me. I said, I'm not here for any BS. Brother had moved in with wife and children to parents' house as his own property has been seized until the investigation is over. They all pleaded for help. Brother cried and tried to hug me. I loathed him, gesturing him to stay away. I said, years ago when I was pleading for help, no one came to my rescue. I was being labeled a thief and chased out of the house. Brother said he was sorry for what he did with teary eyes. I said, your crocodile tears and not helping here. I was tried in front of the whole family and relatives. So this sorry and confession should also happen in front of everyone. Mom yelled at me for calling for a show at the difficult time. I said, not my problem. If they want help, they need to do this. Helplessly, they called up everyone, pleading with them to come. Most of the relatives had ghosted them and didn't respond. Some of them refused to come to avoid any trouble with the law. Mom had to tell them that it was about me, and brother had to confess something in front of everyone. Some of the few uncles and aunts showed up. Some agreed to come for genuine concerns, while the gossip mongers were in with a popcorn tub for some hot spice. They were enough to spread the information to others. Brother confessed in front of everyone that he was the one who stole money from the family business to start his illicit side hustle and made me the scapegoat. Someone asked him why would he do that to his own brother. He said that Dad wouldn't have approved of his business idea, and I was in a vulnerable situation. Hence he hatched a plan to exploit me to fulfill his ambitions. He set up his separate manufacturing unit, got his own clinic, and bought a house all before the age of 30. While everyone was praising him for his hard work. It was his treachery which got him everything. My uncle, who had a slightly softer spot for me in my childhood days, said, I knew one cannot be a thief. He said he was sorry he couldn't help me back then, but was proud that I uplifted myself from my rock bottom and didn't succumb to it. That's what the thing is. Everyone wants to ride a rising tide. Dad was like, we did what you demanded. Now you ought to help us get out of this. I said, I would request someone at my firm to represent the case, but it wouldn't be for free. Dad got furious and said that if they had money to pay, they could have hired any other lawyer. Why do they need my help? I said, good luck then. I mean, what do they expect? That I pay for his attorney to save him prison time when he framed me falsely and made my life a living hell. Dad got agitated and said, Linda, my mom. Don't worry, I'll figure out something myself. We wasted so much time seeking help from this piece of me. How could we expect help from him when he has always been a useless ass? I said, at least I'm not a fraudster. Despite the betrayal they got from their golden child, they were still having his back. I warned them to get off his back or be ready to go down with him. I left shortly after that. My work was done. My revenge was taken. I don't know. I might have helped my parents to get out of this crap, but I got pissed off to see that they were still supporting my brother. They disowned me and humiliated me for the same theft. You see their double standard. So go live with that. Update 2. After that face-off with my family and relatives, a lot of my cousins, uncles, and aunts called me and apologized for not standing up for me. I said, it doesn't matter now. No one supported me when I needed it the most. I got to know from them that my brother had been arrested last month on the charges of manufacturing and selling drugs that are not FDA approved. He has been sentenced to 8 years of prison time, but his attorney is fighting to reduce the time period. While my dad has not been arrested, his involvement in my brother's illegal business has been ruled out. Life is not easy for them. Firstly, his warehouse was seized for more than 5 to 6 months, so everything came to a standstill. Also, the health departments have been monitoring him closely with unannounced searches and vigilance, leading to mental stress and work disturbances. Getting into legal matters is never a good thing for business owners. No one wants to be associated with such a business. He lost their regular procurers and customers. Some of my relatives said that my parents have aged like 10 years in the last 6 months, and now they regret trusting their golden child so blindly. But they still don't talk about me or have any regrets for what they did to me. I said, "It was fine. I don't need them now." The uncle closest to my dad said that my parents are now thinking about selling off everything and moving to a different and secluded part of the town, or maybe to the countryside where no one knows them. They are embarrassed by the constant judgment and our rollings of their neighbors and relatives. Sil has moved with her parents because she has nowhere else to go after brother was arrested. I won't say I feel satisfied or super happy about everything, but I'm glad that the truth came out eventually, and justice is served to them. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Caught my college GF cheating with frat guys at a party. I snitched to her sorority, and she got kicked out. My girlfriend and I both met during our freshman orientation at our university. There was this week-long event for first-year students, and she and I were in the same orientation group. My girlfriend and I just clicked, and we spent a lot of time together. There was a dance for the freshmen at the end of the orientation week, and I went with her as my date. We actually both ended up losing our virginity to each other later that night. Looking back, it was really embarrassing, but it was also pretty sweet. We dated for 2 years while we were in college. I really loved her. Neither of us was in a place to even think about getting married. We were starting a life together, but we were comfortable with each other. Our university had a vibrant Greek life scene. I have always thought fraternities and sororities were weird, so I had absolutely no intention of joining one. My girlfriend, on the other hand, had been dreaming about joining a specific sorority for years. When she picked out what college she was going to, she knew that she wanted to rush the sorority as soon as she had the chance. During the summer between first and second year, she rushed the sorority that she wanted and ended up getting in. I was happy for her because I knew it was something that she had really been looking forward to. But I was a little uneasy about the idea of it. This specific sorority was a prime example of why I hated them. Everyone there was like a clone of the others. Her schedule was always so full of things that she was doing with the sorority in her classwork that I rarely got to see her. She was always going to parties, fundraisers, and campus events that the sorority had been planning. I felt like I was getting left behind in some ways. Before, we would talk every day, but after she joined, we barely even texted each other. We finally got together one day for lunch, and I addressed my concerns to her. She told me it was only temporary, and that as soon as she was fully settled in the sorority, things would get back to normal. The last thing she wanted was to break up with me, she said during that lunch. She started telling me about some of the crazy rules that the sorority had. They expected that their sorority sisters would behave in such a way to positively represent the sorority to prospective members. That meant the way they dressed had to be a certain way, they couldn't go out with certain kinds of men, and they needed to uphold the values of the sorority at all times. Several weeks went by, and things between my girlfriend and I weren't improving. I still cared for her and I wanted to be with her, but there was so much distance between us just because she joined that sorority. I didn't want to be the person to tell her not to join or give her an ultimatum, but it was very stressful for me. She texted me one night and invited me to a big frat party that was held annually. Again, I can't stress this enough, I hate Greek life, and I had no desire to go to that party. However, I wanted to see my girlfriend. I had a work-study on campus to help with some events that went on for the undergrads on the weekends, so I told her that I would be there if I could get out of work early. At the beginning of the night, it really wasn't looking like I was going to be able to, so I texted my girlfriend and told her that. However, the movie that I was screening for the students was not very good, and a lot of people ended up walking out before it was over. I was able to end my shift very early, and I figured I would go and see my girlfriend at the party. It was very crowded when I got there, and I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know anybody at the party, and I was just looking for my girlfriend. I recognized a couple of the other girls from her sorority, but I didn't feel very comfortable going up to them to talk. I walked around the fraternity house and looked for my girlfriend. I made it to the top floor where there were a few bedrooms. I opened a couple of doors and peeked inside to see if she was there. I was really hoping that she wasn't because the idea of her being in a bedroom in a frat house made me very nervous. I really liked her, and I didn't want to get my heart broken over what might be happening behind those closed doors. Unfortunately, it was exactly what I was afraid of. I opened one of the doors and found my girlfriend kissing one guy with another guy behind her, kissing her neck. She was topless, and they were all three clearly about to have sex. I just stood there for a minute in shock as I watched the guy behind my girlfriend. He actually saw me and yelled at me to get out. That's when my girlfriend opened her eyes and looked at me and rushed to the door to talk to me. I just slammed the door shut in her face and made my way out of the frat house to go back to my room. She was blowing up my phone and trying to get through to me, but I didn't respond. I was hurt by what I saw. Part of me had expected it when I was walking through the hallway, but I was hoping it wasn't going to be real. There had been a lot of distance growing between us since the beginning of the semester, and I guess I knew that we weren't going to last forever. But being cheated on really hurts. In the morning, I sent her a text message and told her that I didn't want to hear any explanations from her, and that we were over. There was no excuse that she could have given me that would have made what she did okay. I blocked her number and spent a few days sulking over it before I decided to get back to my normal life. My mind kept wandering back to the code of conduct that she showed me over lunch a few weeks prior, with all of the ridiculous rules. I couldn't help but think that cheating on your boyfriend and having a threesome with two frat guys would be some kind of violation of the sorority's values. I knew how much being in that sorority meant to her, and I wanted to hurt her and get revenge in some way. I ended up reaching out to the president of the sorority on Facebook and telling her exactly what happened. I didn't really think it would do anything, but if it could sully her reputation, that was enough for me. The president of the sorority just left me on read. A couple of weeks later, I got an email from my ex-girlfriend cursing me out. I guess when I told the president about what happened, she decided to tell a lot of other sorority members. Everybody had started gossiping about her and talking about what she did, and the rumors were spreading throughout the sorority. She felt so uncomfortable that she ended up leaving. She blamed me for it and told me about a whole host of opportunities she was going to be missing out on because she was no longer in that sorority. I don't know if she thought I was going to feel bad about it or what, but I didn't. In my eyes, that was just the consequences of her actions. If there were jobs that she would miss out on after college, that was entirely her own fault, not mine. I ended up blocking her email as well and not talking to her for the rest of the time I was in college. There was a brief incident where we were actually in a class together. We realized that on the first day, but when I went back for the next class, she wasn't there. I can only assume she dropped the class because we were in it together. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My dad divorced my mom for a younger secretary, and my stepmom tries to throw me out of my house. I think my dad forgot that the house is still under my mom's name. I'm a 17-year-old guy, and my life has been turned upside down in the past year. It all started when my dad, who's 45, left my mom, 43, for his 28-year-old secretary. I never saw it coming. My parents always seemed happy together, or at least I thought they were. Growing up, we were a typical middle-class family. Dad worked as a manager at a local manufacturing plant, and Mom was a part-time librarian. We lived in a nice house in the suburbs, went on yearly vacations, and generally had a good life. I was an only child, so I got a lot of attention from both my parents. Dad was always the stricter parent, pushing me to excel in school and sports. He had this idea that I needed to be tough to succeed in life. Mom, on the other hand, was more laid back. She encouraged my creative side and always told me to follow my passions. Things started to change about 2 years ago when Dad got a promotion. He began working longer hours and seemed more stressed. That's when he hired Jessica as his personal secretary. At first, I didn't think much of it. Jessica would sometimes come to our house for work-related stuff, and she always seemed nice enough. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. Dad started working late more often. He'd miss my school events, saying he was swamped at work. Mom tried to hide it, but I could see she was worried and upset. There were hushed arguments behind closed doors that would stop as soon as I walked by. Then, about a year ago, Dad dropped the bomb. He sat Mom and me down and announced he was leaving us for Jessica. He said he had fallen in love with her and that they were going to get married. Mom just sat there silent and pale. I was in shock. I couldn't believe my dad would do this to us. The next few weeks were a blur. Dad moved out and Mom fell into a deep depression. She barely ate or left her room. I tried my best to take care of her, but I was struggling too. I was angry at Dad, worried about Mom, and scared about what would happen to us. About a month after Dad left, Mom decided to go stay with her parents for a while. She said she needed time to heal and figure things out. I understood, but I felt abandoned. Dad had already left, and now Mom was going too. She asked if I wanted to come with her, but I decided to stay at our house. It was my home, and I didn't want to leave my school and friends. That's when things got really complicated. Dad moved back into the house with Jessica, saying it would be better for me to have a family around. I hated the idea, but I didn't feel like I had much choice. Mom was gone and I was still a minor. At first, Dad and Jessica tried to act like everything was normal. They'd ask about my day, try to engage me in conversation at dinner, but I wasn't having it. I kept to myself, spent most of my time in my room, and only came out when I had to. Jessica, or should I say my stepmom, God, I hate calling her that, started trying to play house. She'd try to set rules, tell me to do chores, even attempted to ground me once when I came home late. I just ignored her. She wasn't my mom, and I didn't owe her anything. As the weeks went by, Jessica got more and more controlling. She'd complain to Dad about my attitude, my grades, which had slipped because, surprise, surprise, I was dealing with a ton of emotional crap, even the way I dressed. Dad, who used to be my biggest defender, just went along with whatever she said. Things came to a head last week. I had a big art project due, and I'd been working on it in the garage. Jessica decided that the garage needed to be cleaned out that very day. When I told her I needed the space for my project, she said my hobby wasn't as important as having a tidy house. I lost it. I yelled at her, telling her she had no right to make decisions about my life or this house. I might have also called her some names I'm not proud of. Dad came home in the middle of this, and instead of listening to my side, he immediately took Jessica's part. He started lecturing me about respect and how I needed to listen to my parents. That's when I really blew up. I told them they weren't my parents, that my real mom was the one they had driven away, and that I hated both of them. Jessica started crying, fake tears, I'm sure, and Dad got really angry. He told me if I couldn't respect their rules, maybe I should go live with my mom. I said fine, I'd rather live in a cardboard box, than stay with them. That's when Jessica said fine, pack your bags, you have until the end of the week to get out. I was stunned. They were actually kicking me out. I'm still in high school. For crying out loud. I locked myself in my room and called Mom, sobbing. That's when she dropped a bombshell on me. The house we're living in, it's not Dad's, it's Mom's. Apparently, it was a gift from my maternal grandparents when Mom and Dad got married. They had put it solely in Mom's name as a way to ensure she'd always have a home, no matter what happened. Mom had never told Dad this, always letting him believe the house was theirs. When they divorced, Mom didn't ask Dad to leave the house because she thought it was important for me to have my father around. She trusted that he'd continue to put me first, even with his new relationship. But now, hearing how they were treating me, she was furious. Mom told me not to worry, that she'd handle everything. She said she'd be home tomorrow and that Dad and Jessica were the ones who'd be leaving, not me. I'm sitting in my room right now, alternating between feeling scared, angry, and weirdly triumphant. I don't know what's going to happen when Mom gets here, but I know it's going to be intense. I'll update when I can. Am I wrong for feeling a bit excited about this? Part of me feels guilty for potentially making Dad and Jessica homeless, but another part feels like they deserve it after how they've treated me and Mom. I don't know what to think anymore. Update. Wow, I didn't expect my post to blow up like this. Thank you all for your support and advice. A lot has happened in the last few days, so here's an update. Mom came home the day after I posted. She arrived early in the morning before Dad and Jessica were awake. We had a long talk where she apologized for leaving me alone to deal with everything. She explained that she had been in a really bad place mentally after the divorce and needed time to heal. She also said she regretted not telling me about the house situation earlier, but she had hoped it wouldn't come to this. When Dad and Jessica came downstairs, they were shocked to see Mom in the kitchen. Dad started to say something, but Mom cut him off. She calmly explained that this was her house and that she wanted them out by the end of the week. You should have seen their faces. Dad turned pale, and Jessica's jaw practically hit the floor. Dad started sputtering about how this was his house too, that he had paid the mortgage for years. Mom just slid the deed across the table to him. His name wasn't on it. Jessica got angry. She started yelling about how they couldn't just be thrown out, that they had rights. Mom just looked at her and said, "You had no problem throwing my underage son out of his home. At least I'm giving you a week to find a new place." Dad tried to appeal to Mom's emotions, talking about our family history in the house, how it had been our home for so many years. Mom wasn't having it. She said, "It stopped being your home the day you chose her over your family." They argued for a while, with Dad threatening legal action and Jessica alternating between crying and yelling. Mom stood her ground. She had already talked to a lawyer and knew her rights. The house was solely in her name, and Dad had no claim to it. Eventually, Dad and Jessica retreated to their room. We could hear them arguing behind the closed door. Mom and I spent the day catching up and making plans. She's moving back in permanently, and we're going to redecorate the house to make it feel like ours again. The next few days were tense. Dad and Jessica mostly stayed in their room, only coming out to eat or use the bathroom. They tried a few more times to argue with Mom, but she remained firm. I overheard Dad on the phone with a lawyer, who must have told him the same thing Mom did because he seemed even more defeated afterward. On the third day, Jessica left. She took her stuff and went to stay with a friend. She didn't even say goodbye to me, not that I cared. Dad seemed lost after she left. He tried to talk to me a few times, but I wasn't ready to forgive yet. The day before they were supposed to leave, Dad asked to talk to Mom and me together. He apologized for everything he had done. He admitted that he had handled the divorce terribly and that he had been an awful father to me over the past year. He said he realized now how selfish he had been and how much he had hurt us. Mom listened quietly, then told him that while she appreciated his apology, it didn't undo the damage he had caused. She said he needed to work on himself before he could hope to repair his relationship with me. I didn't say much during this conversation. Part of me wanted to forgive Dad, to have things go back to the way they were, but a bigger part of me was still angry and hurt. I told Dad I needed time and space to process everything. Dad left the next day. It was strange watching him pack up his life into his car before he left. He hugged me and told me he loved me. I didn't say it back, but I did hug him. Felt like the end of a chapter in my life. Now it's just Mom and me in the house. We're slowly settling into a new routine. Mom's looking for a job in town so she can move back permanently. I'm catching up on my schoolwork and trying to process everything that's happened. I'm still angry at Dad, but I'm also sad. I miss the relationship we used to have, but I don't know if we can ever get that back. Mom says it'll take time and that it's okay to have mixed feelings about everything. As for Jessica, I heard from a friend that she and Dad broke up. Apparently, she didn't sign up for all this drama. Can't say I'm sad about that. I'll update again if anything significant happens. Thank you all again for your support. It's been a crazy ride, but I'm hopeful that things will get better from here. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and a lot has changed. Some for the better, some well, it's complicated. First, the good news. Mom has officially moved back home, and it's been great having her around again. We've been spending a lot of time together, catching up on everything we missed during our time apart. She found a job at a local publishing company, which she's really excited about. It's nice to see her happy again. We've also been redecorating the house. We painted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and even started a small vegetable garden in the backyard. It feels like we're reclaiming our space, making new memories to replace the painful ones. My grades have improved now that things have settled down at home. I'm even thinking about college applications, something that seemed impossible a few months ago. Mom's been really supportive, helping me research schools and programs. Now for the complicated part. Dad's been trying to make amends. He calls regularly and has been asking to see me. At first, I ignored his calls and messages. I was still too angry and hurt to deal with him. But after talking it over with Mom and my therapist, yes, I started seeing one. It's been really helpful. I decided to give him a chance. We met at a cafe last week. It was awkward at first. Neither of us seemed to know what to say, but eventually we started talking. Dad apologized again for everything that happened. He said he'd been going to therapy too, trying to understand why he did what he did. He told me about his own childhood, things I'd never known before. His father had been abusive, always putting him down and telling him he wasn't good enough. Dad said he'd spent his whole life trying to prove his worth, always chasing the next achievement. When he got the promotion and met Jessica, it was like he saw a chance to be the successful and important man his father always said he couldn't be. He admitted it was no excuse for how he treated Mom and me, but hearing about his past helped me understand him a little better. He seemed genuinely remorseful and said he wanted to try to rebuild our relationship if I was willing. I told him I needed more time, that while I appreciated his honesty, I wasn't ready to let him back into my life fully yet. He said he understood and that he'd wait until I was ready, no matter how long it took. As for Jessica, turns out their breakup wasn't as final as we thought. They're still in contact, trying to work things out. When Dad told me this, I felt that old anger rising up again, but he assured me that things would be different this time. He said he'd made it clear to Jessica that if they got back together, she needed to respect his relationship with me and Mom. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Part of me thinks Dad deserves a chance at happiness, but another part is worried he'll fall back into old patterns. Mom says it's not our place to judge, that Dad needs to figure things out for himself. She's been surprisingly understanding about the whole thing. There's been an unexpected development with my grandparents, Mom's parents too. When they heard about everything that happened, they were furious with Dad, but they were also upset with Mom for not telling them how bad things had gotten. Apparently, there had been some tension between Mom and her parents for years, stemming from their overprotectiveness. This whole situation seems to have brought them closer together. Grandma and Grandpa have been visiting more often, helping out around the house, and spending time with me. It's nice to have more family around, even if the circumstances that brought us together were less than ideal. As for me, I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days are better than others. There are still moments when I get angry, thinking about everything that happened, but there are also days when I feel hopeful about the future. I'm learning that family is complicated. People make mistakes, sometimes big ones, and while forgiveness isn't always easy or even possible, understanding can help ease the pain a little. I don't know what the future holds for my family. Will Dad and Jessica work things out? Will I ever fully trust Dad again? Can our family heal from all this? I don't have answers to these questions yet. What I do know is that I'm stronger than I thought I was. I've survived one of the toughest years of my life, and I'm still standing. I have a mom who loves me, grandparents who support me, and even a dad who's trying to make things right. It's not the family I had a year ago, but maybe, just maybe, it can be a good one in its own way. Thank you all for listening to my story and for your support throughout this journey. Your kind words and advice have meant more than you know. I'll update again if there are any major developments, but for now, I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. Update 3. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have progressed. Life has settled into a new normal, though it's still a work in progress. Mom and I have really found our groove living together. We've established new routines and traditions, like Sunday brunch and movie nights. She's thriving at her new job and has even started dating again. It was weird at first, but I'm happy to see her moving on and finding joy. As for Dad, our relationship has been slowly improving. We've been meeting regularly, usually for lunch or to do something together, like playing basketball. These meetings are still sometimes awkward, but they're getting easier. Dad's been consistent in his efforts to rebuild our relationship, which I appreciate. He and Jessica did end up getting back together, which I had mixed feelings about initially. However, true to his word, Dad has maintained boundaries. Jessica doesn't come to our meetings, and Dad doesn't try to force a relationship between us. He says he understands that it's up to me if I ever want to have a relationship with her. I graduated high school a couple of months ago. Both Mom and Dad attended the ceremony. It was tense at first, but they managed to be civil for my sake. Jessica didn't come, which I was relieved about. It wasn't the family picture I had imagined a year ago, but it was okay. I'm heading to college in the fall. I decided on a school that's about 2 hours away, close enough to visit home regularly, but far enough to have my own space. Mom's been amazing, helping me prepare for this new chapter. Dad's been supportive too, offering to help with expenses and move-in day. My relationship with my grandparents has continued to grow stronger. They've become a much bigger part of my life, and I'm grateful for their support and wisdom. They've shared stories about Mom's childhood and their own lives, helping me understand my family history better. As for me, I feel like I've grown a lot through this experience. Therapy has been incredibly helpful in processing my emotions and developing coping strategies. I've learned a lot about forgiveness, not just of others but of myself too. I've realized it's okay to still feel angry sometimes and that healing isn't a linear process. I've also learned valuable lessons about communication and setting boundaries. I'm more assertive now about expressing my needs and feelings, which has improved all my relationships. Looking back, I can see how far we've all come. A year ago, I couldn't imagine ever feeling okay again. Now, while things aren't perfect, they're manageable. I've accepted that our family will never be what it once was, but that doesn't mean it can't be good in its own way. As I prepare for college, I feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. I'm looking forward to new experiences and opportunities, but I'm also a bit anxious about leaving the stability Mom and I have built. However, I know I have a strong support system behind me. Dad and I had a heart-to-heart recently where he expressed how proud he was of me for how I've handled everything. He apologized again for putting me through so much pain and promised to continue working on being a better father. It was an emotional conversation, but a needed one. Mom continues to be my rock. She's encouraged me to keep an open mind about my relationship with Dad, while also reminding me that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being. Her strength and resilience throughout this whole ordeal have been inspiring. As for the house, it truly feels like home again. The painful memories have been replaced by new, happier ones. Mom and I have talked about what will happen to it when I'm at college. For now, it'll remain our home base, a place I can always return to. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I feel better equipped to handle whatever comes my way. This experience, as painful as it was, has taught me so much about resilience, forgiveness, and the complexities of family dynamics. Thank you all for following my story and for your support throughout this journey. Your kindness and advice have been a source of comfort during some really tough times. As I embark on this new chapter of my life, I carry with me the lessons learned and the strength gained from this experience. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I laughed at my boss's disabled daughter, and I got fired for it. To get revenge, I married her. Technically, she's not my boss's daughter, but the daughter of the guy who owns the entire company. This happened in front of him. Everything was going great until last week when we were scheduled to have our quarterly retreat. Since we were the main regional office in the area, all of the employees from the satellite locations came to our office for the retreat. I've been with the company for 3 months, and we're still on orientation, so I was still learning the ropes. The owner of the company rarely visits our office. He's been overseeing the setup of a new satellite office for the last year, according to my coworkers, but he was there for the retreat, as was his disabled daughter, Amy. One of my coworkers told me Amy works at one of the satellite offices, and I probably wouldn't have much interaction with her, but I should be nice. That seemed like a no-brainer. I'm nice to everyone regardless. I won't claim to be an expert on Amy's disability, but it seemed like she had childlike mannerisms and struggled with expressing herself. She also had some problems with motor skills. I'll describe the only interaction I had with her prior to the incident. I went to refill my coffee, and Amy was in front of me getting her coffee. I watched her struggle with getting condiments added and putting the lid on, so I politely asked if she needed any help. She thanked me, said she did, and let me finish making it. While I was making it, she said she hated coffee, but her dad made her drink it because she had to be always alert. I smiled, said that was definitely important, and handed her the cup. She thanked me again and went back to the office her dad was using, where she had been most of the day. I felt like I'd been a good Samaritan and went on my way. Most of the retreat is team-building exercises. Prior to the incident, Amy only participated in the puzzle race, where groups put puzzles together without the box art to see which team could finish faster. Amy wasn't in my group, so I didn't have any interaction with her there. My team did not win, and hers obviously didn't. The big event, and the one that everyone seemed the most excited for, was the last activity of the day. Our boss gave us a list of potential clients. We were supposed to select 3 as a group and put together something to attract the customer. The job was in sales and advertising. We were told we would be judged on our creativity. My group explained that we could do pictures, slogans, jingles, whatever we wanted. Each person expected to work on one individually, then work with their group to polish it up before it was presented to everyone. It was kind of a big deal because of previous retreats. There would be clients on the list the owner was already close to bringing on board, and if you impressed the owner, you might just land that account. I went with a jingle, wrote a few words, and recorded it. It was silly but fit the brand. My group gave me some pointers. We made some improvements, and I recorded the final product for submission. I helped my team with our projects until it was time to turn everything in. After everything was turned in, we gathered in the big conference room to critique each other. The owner went through them one by one. If it was a picture or a storyboard, he put it up, read it, and we'd make comments, good or bad. There were some that were great, which drew a lot of compliments, and some that were really bad, which we laughed about as a group. You could tell the senior account managers didn't care much about the exercise or put much effort into their pitches. Nobody seemed to get upset or offended, regardless of the feedback. When my jingle was played, it got a lot of comments, not all of them good, and I took the feedback with a smile. After getting my feedback, I felt a little more comfortable about sharing my thoughts on other presentations. I gave what I thought was valuable feedback to a few products, laughed at a couple others, and then a rather crude drawing was put up with the exact same company I had chosen. I immediately joked, well, at least my jingle was better than that. Did a 3-year-old draw this? And laughed to absolute silence. I was really confused because plenty of people had made jokes and everyone laughed. Instead, a few people looked at me like I was disgusting, and the owner said, well, if you don't have anything nice to say, keep it to yourself. Maybe then my boss scooted down to where I was sitting and told me I needed to go to my desk right now. I noticed as I was gathering my things that the owner's daughter was red-faced and starting to tear up. The team-building exercise was over for me. I went back to my desk, and it began to sink in that the drawing must have been drawn by the owner's daughter. There was no warning or anything. The owner didn't reveal who put together what we were looking at until after a few critiques. Maybe I should have known. Everyone was joking and having fun up to that point. Someone else had a pretty bad drawing that got laughed at. Either way, I felt awful. As soon as the event was over, I approached my boss to apologize. He told me to wait for him in the office. Long story short, I was fired. My boss said since I was still on orientation, he had decided I wasn't a good fit for the company, so it was better to let me go now. He didn't outright say I was being fired for making fun of her drawing, but that's literally the only thing that I've ever gotten in trouble for at work up until that point. I've been praised. I didn't get much time to process it because my boss had already called security, who showed up fairly quickly and escorted me to my desk to gather my things before escorting me out of the building. An hour later, I got a call from one of my former teammates who asked if I wanted to join the team for a drink one last time. They needed it after the retreat and felt bad that they didn't warn me. I wasn't feeling up for it, but I wanted to try and make sense of the whole situation, so I went to the bar. In the back of my mind, I was thinking that since I'm about to start looking for a new job, a few references from former coworkers wouldn't be bad, since I definitely won't be getting one from my boss or the owner of the company after everything that happened. The team explained that Amy comes to all of these retreats, and she always does some crude drawing like that. Everyone just sort of knows to say nice things about it and move on. One of my teammates said that once you've seen one of her drawings, you know what to look for. Well, I didn't, and nobody warned me. I started to get pretty upset that this was a known thing, and everyone knew but me. But what could I do? I had already screwed up, and it cost me my job. The team also shared more about Amy. Apparently, she works at one of the satellite offices, but doesn't really do anything. The people in charge of the office try to come up with stuff for her to do because she gets upset when she's bored. The team said the way the people who work there describe it, they were basically her babysitters, so she wouldn't bother her dad all day when he spent most of his time there. And after he moved on to establish the new satellite office, he didn't take Amy with him because she liked all the friends she had at that office. They also said that her dad had harassed a few single guys at the office to take her on dates, which seems pretty inappropriate, but he does own the company. My team said Amy desperately wants a boyfriend and wants to get married, which she talks about all the time. The consensus seemed to be that there's no way she actually understands how relationships or marriage works, and her dad probably put this idea in her head to begin with. At this point, I was just frustrated with the owner. Why did he feel the need to force his employees to take care of his disabled child? It is in no way part of their job description. He has plenty of money to actually pay a professional to take care of her. One of my teammates joked that dating Amy wasn't a bad deal because whoever married her would inherit at the company since she is the old man's only kid. I wasn't really in the mood for jokes at that point, after losing my job over one, so I told them I needed to go. But then I got to thinking, wouldn't that be a fitting revenge? Oh, and the cherry on top, Amy sent me a Facebook friend request over the weekend. After sitting on it for a few days, I accepted the friend request. I immediately messaged Amy. I said I shouldn't have made that joke about anyone's work. It was unprofessional and I was sorry. It took her a while to respond, but when she finally did, she thanked me for my apology, but said she sent me the request because she wanted to apologize since I lost my job over it. Amy and I ended up messaging back and forth until almost 3 a.m. We spent a lot of time talking about her. That's just the direction it went, so I asked questions since she seemed comfortable talking about it. We eventually circled back to the drawing and my terrible response to it. She wasn't that offended by my response because she assumed I didn't know. She got upset primarily because she knew all hell was about to break loose, and she had no way to communicate with anyone. She was so upset when she found out I got fired and tried to talk to her dad, but he wouldn't listen to her. She's fully aware that a lot of people at the company just pretend to be nice to her because she's the owner's daughter, but she does have a few friends at the satellite office where she works. To better understand her disability, it was getting late for both of us at that point, really late. She asked if I had watched the first episode of the new season of Game of Thrones yet, which I have, and she asked if I'd like to talk about it after she watched it. I told her I'd love to, and that maybe for episode 2 we could watch it together. And so that was our first date. Over a period of 6 months, I slowly gained her confidence and we started dating. She just wanted someone who would listen and spend time with her, which I was happy to do. She was honestly a very kind soul. I still didn't like her father, but he was so happy that Amy was able to have a long-time boyfriend. He even rehired me and promoted me rapidly at work. He was the one who first suggested that we should get married. I could tell that it wasn't in good faith. He just wanted to dump Amy onto someone else. He saw her as a burden that I was happy to take. We are set to get married in July. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I hold my brother responsible for the passing of my other sibling, yet his children wish to have me be a part of their lives. One of my employees mentioned that this may be a good place to get some advice for my current dilemma. I, 46M, am one of 4 kids. My older brother, P, 48M, I think, who I no longer have any contact with. My younger brother, J, who is no longer with us. And my youngest sister, K, 44F, recently had children, 2 girls and 1 boy, all in their late teens and early 20s. They reached out to me and expressed a desire to have a relationship. I have 0 contact with their father and swore that I would beat him black and blue if I ever saw him again. A little background. My oldest brother, P, was always the golden child. No matter what he did, my parents always had an excuse for why it was not his fault. Bad grade? Teacher had it out for him. Cheating on every single one of his relationships. Good thing you did it to her before she did it to you. That one was my personal favorite. He also used to torment Jay and me constantly when we were smaller than him, until in high school when I hit a growth spurt and sprung up to about 6 feet 4 inches and 230 pounds worth of muscle. After that, I became the typical jock type, played football, partied, bunch of friends, etc. Well, my younger brother, Jay, didn't get as lucky and stayed pretty small and scrawny throughout high school and college, only getting up to about 5 feet 8 inches and didn't have a super active social life. Despite the difference in our schooling experience, I was always very protective of Jay, especially since we were always having to put up with P's shenanigans, which stopped once he realized I could pound him into the ground and not break a sweat, as he was also a lot smaller than me at only 5 feet 10 inches. Not much to say about K. She was a great younger sister, and P didn't mess with her or he would incur the wrath of our mother. So, in the late 90s, Jay met his first real girlfriend, and was over the moon about her. He spent every spare moment with her, and when he wasn't with her, he would do nothing but gush about her. I had never seen him so happy. Well, one day he comes to us all smiles and announces that A is pregnant and they are expecting. The mood quickly turned, however, when a week later it came out that A had been cheating on J for the duration of their relationship with our older brother, P. This broke my brother, and of course P, being the golden that he is, didn't even get a disappointed glance from our parents. To this day, I've never seen someone look so broken as J had looked the last time I saw him. I believe his heartache was only compounded by the fact that my parents basically told him to get over it and be happy for our brother. Well, about a week after this revelation came to light, J took his own life. I had never been so sad and angry at the same time in my entire life. Sad that I would never see my brother again, and the pure rage of knowing that this was my brother and parents' fault. During the funeral, P walked in with A, and I saw red. Thankfully, I had other family there to stop me from doing anything stupid, but I told P that if I ever saw him again, I would kill him. Shortly after that, I cut contact with 90% of my family, with the exception of K and a cousin I had always been close with, because everyone except them wanted to make excuses for my parents and P. Fast forward to present. I never had any kids, and truth be told, I never wanted any. I much prefer the role of the fun uncle. K met a great guy and had 2 daughters who I absolutely adore. He had 2 more kids with A before cheating on her, shocker, and splitting, and I've never met any of them. My parents have tried to make contact a handful of times, but I always told them to kick rocks. So, last week, I'm chatting with K's daughters, 19 and 17, and they mentioned that their cousins have wanted to meet me for a long time and were hoping I would be willing to meet them as well. I don't believe they know everything that transpired between their dad and I, but I would be lying if I said I never had any desire to meet them. So, everyone, I'm hoping to crowdsource any ideas, suggestions on how I begin and maintain a relationship with P's kids while also keeping P and A out of my life. Any suggestions are welcome. Edit 1. One commenter just brought up a good point that kind of changes my question. The reason I wanted to meet with them soon is because they are all back in town at once from college due to COVID. But someone gave me the idea that maybe meeting them one at a time once they return to their college campuses or living arrangements is the better option. Thoughts? Edit 2. I've had multiple people ask me why K still talks with the people I cut contact with, so I'll just copy/paste one of my replies here. Even though my sister was just as crushed about Jay's death as I was and was angry for a long time, she and her then-boyfriend, future husband, hit a financial rough patch after graduating college and were forced to move in with our parents due to unrelated drama at the time. They couldn't stay with me, so my sister stayed with them for several years, and over that time, their relationship improved. Even though I wasn't thrilled at the time, I understood. She still doesn't really have a relationship with P, but is cordial if they meet. I don't blame her because our parents did a lot for her, and her daughters love their cousins, so I didn't want to put her in that kind of position of choosing. More information provided by the OP. As much as I hate P and A and do still blame them for Jay's death, I'd like to think I have more class than to talk P to his kids. My decision to split from the rest of my family outside of P and my parents was also a very pragmatic one. As I started to make money, I kept getting more and more requests for handouts and favors, which was already weighing on my last nerve after Jay's death. It had just kind of hit a boiling point, and I burned every bridge on the way out. I've had minimal contact with some of them over the years regarding my sister, K. Considering she was just as crushed about Jay's death as I was and was angry for a long time, she and her then-boyfriend, future husband, hit a financial rough patch after graduating college and were forced to move in with our parents due to unrelated drama at the time. They couldn't stay with me, so my sister stayed with them for several years, and over that time, their relationship improved. Even though I wasn't thrilled at the time, I understood. She still doesn't really have a relationship with P, but is cordial if they meet. I don't blame her because our parents did a lot for her, and her daughters love their cousins, so I didn't want to put her in that kind of position of choosing. P's kids haven't reached out to me personally yet. I was only told about their desire to meet me through K's daughters. That's why I think the reason they may be interested in meeting is that they have a close relationship with K's kids, and I am a big part of their lives, so maybe they just want to get to know me. At least that's what I hope it is. If this were 5 years ago, this would be a different story, but according to K, all the kids are in college and are only back with P due to COVID. I've been thinking that I should hold off on meeting them until they all return back to college and their dorm or previous living arrangement, but by then they will be all over the country. Now is the only time I would get to meet them all at once, but now that I type it out, maybe meeting them one at a time would be the better option. Update. How do I start a relationship with my nieces and nephew when their father was responsible for my brother's passing? Hello everyone. I'll start off thanking the community for all their comments and replies. It gave me a lot to think about and helped me formulate a plan on how I was going to approach this. I had several people tell me I should not meet up and just let sleeping dogs lie, but the what if of it all would have eaten me alive if I didn't see them. Second, I wanted to answer a few questions or concerns that people brought up in my previous post. One of them was why I used letters to represent the people in my story and not just make up fake names. I mostly did this because I didn't want to confuse myself with fake names and then accidentally put the wrong name to represent someone's role or actions. I apologize if this makes it difficult to read. Another concern I saw a lot was that they were trying to get back in contact for my money, which was also a concern of mine, but I don't spoil my sister's children at all. I'm currently helping her oldest with financial aid and will be assisting the youngest as well, but no money is coming out of my pocket. I'm simply teaching them responsible money management along with putting them in contact with financial advisors, and they are extremely grateful. So, I hope they will not expect some kind of college loan that they're not going to get. Finally, I had several people ask if I ever went to therapy for this. I did go see a therapist pretty regularly for about 6 years after I made the initial break from my family, and it did help significantly. She did counsel reconciliation for a very long time, but I told her that it was not up for discussion. She also helped me see who else in my life were big problems and helped me make a semi-clean break from them as well. One of the not-so-clean breaks was the reason I was unable to take Kay in after she had financial troubles and had to move back in with our parents. So, on to the update. I decided to hold off on meeting them as a group, especially since they were still living with their dad at the time, and just do one-on-one meetings. I also didn't want to be bombarded with questions or propositions for money if the conditions weren't good. So, the first one to go back to her college town, which was shortly after my first post, was the oldest of P's kids, who I'll call C21F. She went back to find a place to stay and get a part-time job in her college town, so that she was ready for classes to start in the fall. I got her personal email from K's kids because I don't really have social media and decided to reach out to her. She was pretty excited to hear from me, and I flew to her city, and we set up a time to meet on one of her days off. I got to the restaurant early so that I could have a few drinks and calm my nerves. I decided to reserve the most private table that they had so that we could say anything we wanted without people listening in and or staring. Well, the moment she walked through the door, I immediately knew who she was. She was the spitting image of my mother, her grandmother, when she was that age. She even had the green eyes that Jay and I inherited from our mother. P was always jealous. He never inherited them because we were always getting compliments from strangers when we were little about our eyes, and you could tell it would burn P a new one because people weren't paying attention to him. So I kept it together and we exchanged greetings. After the typical small talk about school life and work, we placed our orders, and she finally says, "I guess you're wondering why I wanted to meet you." She proceeds to tell me that last year she decided to buy an Ancestry DNA kit for her and her sister as something fun to do during lockdown, and as many of you guessed, the kit came back as them being half-sisters. C is Jay's daughter. She goes on to tell me that growing up, P had always treated his other kids better than her, and with the DNA results, it all finally made sense why, and the reason they don't have the best relationship. Clearly, P is still just as big a piece of work as he always was. Nice to know some things never change. I'm sure he harbored some kind of resentment with the chance of her being Jay's daughter. After going to her mom with the results, I surprisingly admitted to everything that happened. I guess after I found out that her daughter was Jay's child, the situation and his suicide hit her like a ton of bricks, and she has harbored a great deal of guilt regarding it ever since. I went on to tell her all about the circumstances of her conception, Jay's suicide, my estrangement, the reason for their rocky relationship, etc. According to her, P wanted to give her up for adoption after she was born, but my parents, who I guess finally grew a spine, told him no and that they would financially cut him off if he did so. Once lockdown restrictions finally started to lift in California, She thought reaching out to me would be the best way to get to know what her bio dad was like. Apparently, it was only her that really had the urge to meet me, as I was closest to Jay during his life, and that was when she let Kay's daughters know that she wanted to meet me and asked them to contact me on her behalf. She knew we were close, and that would be the best way to get in touch. After this, I couldn't hold back anymore. The waterworks began flowing. I couldn't help but apologize to C for all the things she had to go through with P. If I had known, I would have adopted C in a heartbeat. We spent the rest of the meal just talking about Jay, remembering old stories about him that I thought I had forgot. She is a great girl and smart as a whip, telling me how she intends to pursue her master's in computer science. She has scholarships and grants to cover all her schooling, which put my mind at ease that I probably wasn't being taken for the long con. We ended the night with exchanging contact info and a big hug. Feels like I got a little piece of Jay back now, knowing that it was only C who really wished to meet. I asked her if she would reach out to her siblings on my behalf and see if they wanted to meet as well. Other than that, I am extremely happy with how this meeting turned out and feel like I have a lot of catching up to do with C in the future. Thankfully, she completely understood and respected my desire to still stay no contact with P and her mother. I'm sure I will do an update on each of my meetings with the other kids as well. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I caught my wife cheating with her stepbrother. Then I started dating her mom. Now my ex-wife is furious and calling us disgusting. My wife, Melissa, 30F, and I, 32M, have been together for 12 years, married for 7. We met during our sophomore year of college at a mutual friend's party. I remember being instantly drawn to her vibrant personality and infectious laugh. I was always more of an introvert, preferring small gatherings to wild parties, but Melissa had a way of bringing me out of my shell. We started dating a few months after that party. It wasn't always smooth sailing. We had our fair share of arguments and misunderstandings, especially in those early years, but we always managed to work through our issues. I remember one particularly rough patch during our senior year when we almost broke up over different post-graduation plans. I had been offered a job in our college town, while Melissa wanted to move to the city. We spent weeks going back and forth, neither willing to compromise. In the end, we realized our relationship was more important than any job or location. I turned down the offer and we moved to the city together after graduation. Those first few years in the city were tough. We were both working entry-level jobs, living in a tiny studio apartment, and trying to figure out adulthood. Money was tight and we often argued about finances, but we also had some of our best times during those years. We'd explore the city on weekends, finding hidden gem restaurants and quirky museums. We'd stay up late dreaming about our future. The house we'd buy, the kids we'd have, the travels we'd take. Melissa was always close with her mom, Karen. When Melissa was young, her dad traveled a lot for work, so it was often just her and Karen. They developed a tight bond that continued into Melissa's adulthood. Karen was always supportive of our relationship, even in the early days when my own parents were skeptical about us getting serious so young. 5 years ago, Melissa's parents went through a messy divorce. It turned out her dad had been having an affair with his secretary for years. Melissa was devastated. She had always looked up to her dad, and the revelation shook her to her core. She threw herself into supporting Karen, often spending hours on the phone with her or driving to visit her on weekends. The divorce took a toll on our relationship too. Melissa became more guarded, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. We went through a rough patch where she would accuse me of cheating anytime I worked late or went out with friends. It took months of reassurance and even a few couples therapy sessions to work through it. Things started looking up about 2 years ago. We had both advanced in our careers, bought a small house in the suburbs, and were talking about trying for a baby. Karen had started dating again, which took some of the pressure off Melissa to be her primary support system. Karen met Tom online, and they hit it off immediately. After only 6 months of dating, they eloped. It was a huge shock to all of us, especially Melissa. She was worried Karen was rushing into things, still vulnerable from the divorce, but Tom seemed like a good guy. Successful real estate developer, charming, treated Karen well, so we tried to be supportive. Tom has 2 kids from a previous marriage, a daughter around Melissa's age and a son, Eric, 35M, who's a few years older than us. Eric started coming around for family gatherings, and he and Melissa seemed to get along well. I thought it was nice she was bonding with her new stepfamily. Eric and I even played golf a few times. He seemed like a decent guy, though a bit of a player. He was always talking about different women he was seeing. Over the past year, I noticed Melissa growing more distant. She was always on her phone, started going out more with friends I'd never met, and our sex life dwindled to almost nothing. When I tried to talk to her about it, she'd get defensive and say she was just stressed from work. I wanted to believe her, but something felt off. Last week, I borrowed Melissa's iPad to look up a recipe while she was in the shower. A message notification popped up from Eric that said, "Can't wait to see you later, babe. Wear that red lingerie I like." My stomach dropped. I know I shouldn't have, but I opened the message and started scrolling. There were hundreds of sexually explicit texts and photos going back months. I confronted Melissa as soon as she got out of the shower. At first, she tried to deny it, but when I told her I saw the messages, she broke down crying. She admitted she's been sleeping with Eric for the past 6 months. Apparently, it started innocently. Eric asked her advice on dating apps, but things quickly turned flirtatious and then sexual. I'm completely gutted. Not only has Melissa been cheating, but with her stepbrother of all people. I can't even wrap my head around how messed up that is. I asked her to leave and go stay with a friend while I figure things out. I haven't told anyone in the family yet. I know it will destroy Karen when she finds out. I'm at a total loss for what to do now. Part of me still loves Melissa and wants to try to work things out. We've been through so much together. Moving to the city with nothing, supporting each other through tough times at work, dealing with her parents' divorce. I keep thinking about all our dreams and plans. Just a few months ago, we were talking about names for our future kids. How did we go from that to this? But I don't know if I can ever trust her again after this level of betrayal. And the fact that it's with Eric makes it even worse. How could we ever have normal family gatherings again? Every time I close my eyes, I see the messages and pictures she sent him. It makes me physically sick. I'm considering telling Karen and Tom everything, but I'm worried about blowing up the whole family. Should I confront Eric? Try to save my marriage? Get a divorce? I feel like my whole world has been turned upside down, and I don't know which way is up anymore. I keep replaying everything in my mind, wondering if there were signs I missed. Was she already seeing Eric when we went on that family vacation last summer? Was she thinking of him when we were trying to conceive a few months ago? The thought of it makes my skin crawl. I haven't been able to eat or sleep much since finding out. I've been calling in sick to work, which I know I can't keep doing, but I can't face anyone right now. I feel like my whole life has been a lie. Any advice would be appreciated. I never thought I'd be in this position, and I'm completely lost. Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for the supportive comments and advice. It really helped me get through some of the darkest days. After taking some time to process everything, I decided I needed to tell Karen and Tom the truth. I couldn't in good conscience keep this from them, especially knowing Melissa and Eric were likely still carrying on their affair. I invited Karen and Tom over for dinner, told Melissa not to come, and broke the news to them. To say they were shocked would be an understatement. Karen burst into tears, and Tom just sat there in stunned silence. I showed them some of the messages as proof. Tom's initial reaction was denial. He accused me of making it all up to break up his marriage, but Karen believed me immediately. She said she had noticed Melissa and Eric being overly close lately, but she never imagined this. She was devastated, not just by Eric's betrayal but by Melissa's as well. Melissa was like a daughter to her, even before the marriage to Tom. After the initial shock wore off, Tom got angry. He stormed out, saying he was going to confront Eric. Karen stayed and we talked for hours. She apologized profusely, feeling guilty for bringing Tom and Eric into our lives. I assured her it wasn't her fault at all. Karen shared some things about her past that gave me a new perspective on the situation. Apparently, when she was in college, she had a brief affair with her roommate's boyfriend. She said the guilt ate her alive, and she eventually confessed to her roommate, destroying their friendship. She told me that experience is part of why she and Melissa's dad lasted as long as they did. She was so determined not to be that person again that she ignored red flags in their marriage. The next day, all hell broke loose. Tom had apparently gone to Eric's apartment, and things got physical. Eric ended up with a broken nose, and Tom was arrested for assault. He was released on bail but now has charges pending. Melissa showed up at our house in hysterics. She was furious that I had told Karen and Tom. She screamed at me, saying I had no right to blow up her family like that. I told her she was the one who blew up our family when she decided to sleep with her stepbrother. In the midst of her anger, Melissa revealed some things about her affair with Eric that made me even more certain our marriage was over. Apparently, they had been sleeping together since the family vacation last summer, the one where Melissa and I had that big fight about having kids. I had wanted to start trying right away, but Melissa said she wasn't ready. Now I know why. She also admitted that she and Eric had talked about running away together. They had this whole fantasy life planned out. Moving to California, starting over where no one knew they were step-siblings. The only thing holding them back was fear of hurting their parents. I asked Melissa point-blank if she wanted to try to save our marriage. She hesitated, then admitted she had real feelings for Eric and wasn't sure what she wanted. That was all I needed to hear. I told her I wanted a divorce, and she needed to move out permanently. The past few weeks have been a whirlwind of lawyer consultations, dividing assets, and finding Melissa a new place to live. We're moving forward with a divorce. Thankfully, we don't have kids, so that simplifies things a bit. Karen filed for divorce from Tom as well. She said even if she could forgive him for Eric's actions, she couldn't handle the violent outburst. Plus, she felt like she rushed into the marriage, and it never felt quite right. Eric moved out of state, presumably to get away from the whole mess he created. Last I heard, he and Melissa were still in contact but not actually together. I guess the allure wore off once it wasn't a forbidden affair anymore. I'm still struggling to come to terms with everything, but I know ending the marriage was the right call. Melissa's betrayal runs too deep to ever fully trust her again. I keep thinking about all the lies and deception. How many times did she tell me she was working late when she was really with Eric? How many family dinners did we sit through while they were secretly sleeping together? I'm focusing on healing and figuring out who I am outside of my relationship with Melissa. It's strange. We've been together since college. I've never really been an adult without her. I'm rediscovering old hobbies and interests that I had let fall by the wayside during our marriage. Karen and I have actually grown closer through all this. We're supporting each other as we both go through divorces. It's nice to have someone who truly understands what I'm going through. We've been getting coffee regularly and talking through everything. I'll post another update once the divorce is finalized. Thanks again for all the support during this nightmare. Update 2. It's been about 6 months since my last update. The divorce from Melissa was finalized last month. It was a long, draining process, but I'm glad it's over. We ended up selling the house and splitting the proceeds. Melissa moved to an apartment across town, and I'm renting a small house for now. In a twist I didn't see coming, Karen and I have grown much closer over the past few months. At first, it was just supporting each other through our respective divorces. We'd get coffee and vent about lawyer meetings or mediation sessions, but gradually it evolved into something more. I was hesitant at first. Karen is 15 years older than me and was my mother-in-law for 7 years. But we have so much in common, and she truly understands what I've been through in a way no one else can. We started dating about 2 months ago. It's strange to think about how our relationship has evolved over the years. I remember being so nervous the first time I met Karen back when Melissa and I had only been dating for a few months. She was intimidating. Successful, sharp-witted, and fiercely protective of Melissa, but she welcomed me into their family with open arms. Over the years, Karen became like a second mother to me. She was always there with advice or support when I needed it. I remember when I was thinking about quitting my job to start my own business. Karen was the one who encouraged me to take the leap. She even loaned me some startup money when things were tight in the beginning. I never in a million years thought our relationship would turn romantic, but after everything we've been through, it just feels right. We connect on a level I never did with Melissa. Karen challenges me intellectually and supports me emotionally in a way I've never experienced before. I was nervous about how people would react, especially given everything that's happened, but surprisingly most of our friends and family have been supportive. They see how happy we make each other, and that's what matters most to them. Melissa found out about Karen and me last week. She showed up at my house unannounced, saying she wanted to talk about getting back together. When Karen answered the door, Melissa lost it. She started screaming about how disgusting and twisted it was. I pointed out the hypocrisy of her sleeping with her stepbrother while judging me for dating her mom. The confrontation with Melissa brought up a lot of unresolved feelings. Part of me felt guilty, like I was betraying her all over again, but then I reminded myself of all the pain she caused, all the lies and deception. Karen and I didn't do anything wrong. We found comfort in each other after Melissa blew up both our lives. I feel a bit guilty about how things have turned out, but I truly care for Karen. She's kind, funny, and we connect on a deep level. For the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future. Eric is still out of state as far as I know. I heard through the grapevine that he and Melissa tried to make a go of an actual relationship, but it fizzled out quickly once the illicit thrill was gone. Last I heard, Melissa was on some dating apps trying to meet new people. Tom's assault case is still pending. He's facing potential jail time. Karen feels bad for him in some ways but says the marriage was a mistake from the start. She's much happier now. I know this update might be controversial to some, but Karen and I are taking things slow and seeing where it goes. After everything we've been through, we both deserve some happiness. Update 3. It's been almost a year since this whole saga began, and I finally feel like my life is back on track. Karen and I are still going strong. We moved in together a couple months ago, and things are great. Our age difference honestly hasn't been an issue at all. We're on the same page about what we want in life and she keeps me young. Living with Karen has been an adjustment, but a good one. So different from living with Melissa. Karen and I have similar habits and routines, which makes day-to-day life easier. We both like to wake up early and go for a run before work. In the evenings, we often cook dinner together and then read or watch documentaries. It's a calmer, more mature relationship than what I had with Melissa. Melissa has mostly faded out of my life, which is for the best. She reached out a few times trying to reconcile, but I shut that down quickly. Last I heard, she's dating some guy she met at work. I hope she's gotten help and worked on herself, but that's not my problem anymore. I ran into Melissa's dad at the grocery store last week. It was awkward at first. I hadn't seen him since before the divorce, but we ended up talking for a while. He apologized for how things ended with Melissa and said he was happy I had found happiness with Karen. It was a surprisingly healing conversation. Eric is apparently engaged to a woman he met in his new city. I guess the whole step-sibling affair thing was just a phase for him. I still can't wrap my head around how he could do that to his family. But again, not my circus, not my monkeys. Tom ended up taking a plea deal on the assault charges. He got probation and anger management classes. He and Karen are on speaking terms now, mainly to deal with finalizing some financial aspects of their divorce. There's no chance of reconciliation there. Karen and I are talking about getting married next year. I never thought I'd be excited about marriage again after what happened with Melissa, but Karen has shown me what a true partnership should be like. We're planning a small ceremony, just close friends and family. I still have moments where the pain of Melissa's betrayal hits me. The other day, I found an old photo album from our college days, and it brought up a lot of emotions, but overall, I'm in a much better place now than I was a year ago. Karen and I are building a life together that feels more authentic and fulfilling than anything I had before. We're talking about starting a business together, a small bookstore/cafe. It's something we've both always dreamed of doing. Karen's business acumen combined with my experience in hospitality could make for a great partnership. It's exciting to be planning for the future again. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comment section. Thank you and see you in the next video.